All right, I think we're live. I'm going to wait until Facebook says we're live, but if you're super fast and already jumped in on this, you're hearing me babble. All right, we are live. Welcome to the Spokane Small Business and Entrepreneur Friday afternoon conversation.
Extravaganza.
I'm your host, Jonathan Byron. With me is Robert Reuter, Dave Ribble, John Kuzichev. Guys, welcome.
Got it. Hey, well, good to be back.
Absolutely.
Another week.
Absolutely. And joining us here in just a moment, Laura Dusek. We have all the sound effects and bell chiming. That is for real. Laura, welcome.
I can't stay.
You can't stay. Laura is dropping off a folder.
You and John get to look at that, or anybody that you want, and I'd like your feedback.
And you can't stay?
I can't. I've got a bad sore throat, and Steve and I have to go do a quick errand. So.
Laura, the camera and everyone else in Facebook and YouTube land is looking at you.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for dropping.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for dropping by. We'll see you next time. All right.
You know where to find us on Friday afternoons, I guess.
You know where to find us. Absolutely.
You can run, but you can't hide.
And as we were talking about before we got started on this broadcast, has been a call for, and we are wanting to put a little bit more emphasis onto ahead of time, letting people know what this is going to be about, what our topics are, what we're going to cover. And then also, I think this is something we talked about last week, and we skimmed over it during the live, but we really genuinely want to hear from our audience, from this Facebook group. What are the topics that you want us to cover? What are the things that you'd like to hear about? So as always, comment in this live video, reach out to us, show up on Friday. We want to hear from you, absolutely.
You can bring those questions live. Action Business Furniture, Sprague Park. We're here.
See if you can stump the band.
I do like that. Yeah,
Right.
Come stump us with your questions. We do have the comments open, so if anybody that's listening to this live on Facebook right now, drop a comment. We will take a look at it and attempt to answer it live while we're here. But in the meantime, we're going to jump into a little bit of a get the conversation going question that we thought might be a fun thing to start with. And that is, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be? And I don't think I have to say and why, because this group, we're pretty good at elaborating on things like that. But, and for definition, for the audience at home and just also for us here in the room, this isn't any particular requirement. It doesn't have to be teenage you, childhood you. It could be last week you. Like, man, if I had known last Friday that this was going to happen, I would have done something differently. But generally speaking, this is for our audience that's watching live, that's watching on the YouTube, is, what's something that you've learned in business that, whether it was a week or two between when you needed to know it and when you learned it, that you wish you had known before you dove into it. And being that we just introduced this topic, I am kind of winding on and on to give you guys time to think. But I'm going to drop a little bit of silence as I get a few things sorted here on my computer. And anybody feel free to jump in with the first thing that comes to your mind.
The thing that, and it's because of what I've been working on this week, when I was started up my business in 2001, it was a lot of activity. There's a lot of, you just do it. You just jump and, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next?
Sure.
And it always thought it was something about big business, that they had these long cycles that, they were, it's January and they're already figuring out what their July, thing is. And the longer I've been in business and now I'm starting to get into all this technology, I'm beginning to realize that there is a value to thinking about not what is next week, but what is happening in 3 months or 6 months. And it has to do with that thing about like driving a car. If you're looking at the front of your car as you drive,
yes,
you're going to be all over the place.
Yep.
If you really want to be effective as a driver, you've got to pick a point that's a ways ahead so that you have time to correct your course. You have time to deal with those issues. And I did a little online course where this week with some AI, and it was supposed to, to be really cool things. But the thing I took away from it was, boy, if I'm going to build a marketing campaign, I've got to have time to put the pieces together. I can't just jump on and, whip something out and publish it next week and expect something to happen. I have to know what's the cycle, how are people going to see it, what are they going to respond to, how much time is that going to take, and have an actual, plan in place.
Great.
So look further out, figure out what you're doing, 3 months from now.
I like that. And before we jump into other people's, like what your advice, I think maybe let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure that we can all certainly resonate with that aspect of growth as we get into business, but also maybe some tips and tricks you've learned along the way that help with that. And I love that windshield illustration, because that's something that I still to this day contemplate, right? I definitely am, as far as a driver, I'm well beyond the point of looking at the front of the car. But there are times that I'll intentionally, while I'm driving, and when it's safe, there's no cars around me, I will look at my windshield. I'll look at a little crack or a little bug on the, I don't have cracks on the windshield right now. That's a really long story. That's very personal to me, because I had an insurance whole thing last year that I dealt with, and I just bumped the table. So now hopefully the camera's still, okay, I didn't turn the switch off, Dave.
It wasn't me this time, no.
But, like you look at a bug, and then you look at the car in front of you, and then you look at the bigger picture and all of that stuff. So weigh in, guys. What are some ways that you've found in business that you maybe discover you're hyper-focused on the windshield, so to speak, and needed to kind of take that step back, and how did you do that?
Got something, John? For me, I'll go.
Yeah.
One of the things I just discovered fairly recently is I have in my office, in our house, I have the downstairs part of it is my office. And I've got a whiteboard on wheels, big one.
Yeah.
And I did something the other day I've never done before. I was over on this side of the board, and I was writing down all kinds of stuff that I wanted to write about, and all the kind of stuff I wanted to bring with Standout Mastery and the classes and things like that I do. And I was really concentrated on all these details on this side of the board. But as I started to map out a little bit more, John a couple of weeks ago challenged me to do content calendaring and things like that. And so I was starting to write some things down. Thank you, sir, for that. But I got a little sticky note, and the sticky note, I wrote on it something to the effect of, "You are now here." And I put it way out on the right. And as soon as I put it on the board, the funny thing about it is that all of this minutia that I have to deal with every day, that we all have to deal with every day, I just kept looking at, "You're here now, you made it." And it fired me up. It fired me up to go, I'll get through this. I don't have to be so buried in it that I can't see daylight anymore. Daylight's right here. And it's not that many steps away. And John, thank you. It was a very encouraging kind of life lesson for me. And I'll probably write about it, because it was like, I can really get there. I can really get there, but I had to put it up first. I had to get to that point and spot what I needed, then maneuver.
It's good.
And it worked. It really worked. So thank you again, sir.
You're welcome. I think being able to, I kind of forgot by now what Rob said. Being able to move the needle forward through visionary tasks by like being the one who opened your business and has the vision for the business, and moving away from the small tasks that keep the needle where it is versus moving the needle forward, being able to delegate.
Yeah.
I know that that related to what Rob had to say earlier. I just forget how I was going to connect it in there.
Just speaking to not getting so focused on
Right,
this
that's what
point
it
right
was.
in front of you
Mhm.
that you end up making a lot of, a lot of mistakes because you're not really getting a target in where you're going.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah, in the beginning when I opened, I was so focused on like my notes for the day and the billing for the day, everything in my business, the smaller tasks. I was so focused on the windshield right in front of me that I was just ending up somewhere. I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of your brain going on autopilot and you're like, how did I get here?
Oh, yeah.
That was a lot of my experience the first couple years that I was in business until I started to delegate those small things that are windshield level focused, and I started to take my vision beyond those things, and I found that really helpful and helped my success as a business owner a lot.
That's great. That's great.
How about you?
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I would say a line that I heard pretty early on that I appreciated, and Brian Buffini is the one that I heard it from. I don't know that it originated with him, but if you're into growth coaching and you like doing business by referral, I can't recommend Brian Buffini enough. He's absolutely amazing. But he said I'm a real estate agent, so he's speaking to realtors. So many realtors spend all of their time working in their business and none of their time working on their business. And I think that speaks to, John, what you were just saying. I think it's very easy for us to get so caught up in, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the delegatable stuff, right? Like for me with real estate, I'm very much involved in my clients' lives. And yes, there are things that I can delegate, and those are things that I have delegated. It allows me to work with more clients and be more available. But there are certain things that you can't delegate. And those things even, I think, can get in the way. Those can be windshield type things where I am actively, let's say I'm helping you buy a house, I'm helping you sell a house. I can get so caught up in that activity that I don't think about what's coming next for my business. What is the next thing for me? And some of those things, I think we've talked about it. Delegating is a huge one. Using a whiteboard, using some sort of methodology to look at the big picture, that's definitely a piece of it. I think also training, right? Carving out time to show up to a conference, to go to a standout mastery type opportunity.
Or just giving yourself permission to read the book,
Yeah,
whatever the book is, and you want to glean information from that. I don't give myself enough permission to just block out and read
yeah.
and learn.
And I would almost add to that, not that, actually this actually very much fits that word picture of, focusing on the windshield. I think that the enjoyable aspects of life, going for a walk, working out, reading a fiction book, doing a puzzle. I recently rediscovered that I like puzzles. I grew up, I liked puzzles. I've always enjoyed putting things together. And you said give yourself permission. As an adult, it almost felt like a childish activity that I shouldn't be doing, or, and so I started doing puzzles last year, and it's really interesting. As the weather got nicer, the puzzles were like, okay, either I just had done too many puzzles or something, the outside was calling me again. But we started doing puzzles as a family, and sometimes it sits there unfinished for a while, but like doing those activities that aren't windshield activities, and maybe not even, although it is important to plan and look to the future for your business, but also just being a human being. Like we were talking about, there's some people that are so driven towards making their business make money, and they just, that they never get to enjoy it. I certainly don't want to come to the end of my life and that, again, driving a car, I'm looking at the windshield, there's so much stuff going on. And once you master driving, you can actually enjoy the mountains in the distance and the clouds and the sunset, or, all these other things. So yeah, I think that's a great.
I know your mantra there, is a long established one. I think it is also still part of it to remember. How was I going to phrase this? Because you're talking about, getting caught up in the small details versus making big plans. And The other aspect is still, though, remember to give yourself the time to do those. Don't be so driven that it has to be done now. It's okay. You got to take care of business. Business is first. And that's where, so, I'm a solopreneur. I don't have anyone to hand these things off to.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I have to do what you're talking about. I have to remember that I've got 3 boxes sitting in the car seat that I've been trying to get to the post office to send. Well, my big bonus was that yesterday I moved them out of the house and into the car. Now, I thought I was going to get them to the post office, but the post office was closed because we had a national day for the President Carter.
Yeah.
So the post office was closed and I couldn't finish it. And today it was like, I need to go to the post office, but I also need to be here for this community and for this group. Okay, it's been weeks, I haven't sent the boxes. I will send the boxes tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to one of the things that, if we're talking about what would I tell my younger self, I think that when you're starting out, you do one of any number of things. And I think what a lot of us start out with is burnout, because, it's like, I'm going to do all of the things and you just go from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and sleep and wake up and do it again. And granted, you're efficient, you're getting things done, and you've grown your business. And I think that there maybe even is a time and a place for that for certain people when they're scaling something, especially if you're younger and you have that bandwidth. But I think that as we mellow, it's like, okay, the stuff doesn't need to be delivered until whatever. So we start to prioritize. And I think maybe that word prioritization, it really, Stephen Covey does a great job of helping you break that into, the urgent and important, the urgent but not important, the important but not urgent, and then the not important, not urgent. And so there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think that just having the maturity or the discipline to say, okay, I'm going to take a breath. And I think we've probably, in this room, we all share this experience of realizing the world's not going to end if I don't get these boxes delivered to the post office today. And, I still, to this day, I have sleepless nights where I'm laying there thinking that the world is going to end, because it's just human nature for us to catastrophize things.
Well, if I can, going back to my analogy of putting everything on the whiteboard and then having a sticker out there that says you made it. Do you all work backwards from some sort of a thing you want to achieve? Do you work backwards from it? Because what Gay and I talk about all the time is that achieving that is fine, but it should be based also on how you want to feel when you get there. Are you ticked off that you had to work that hard, or is it the payoff that you hoped it would be because you set it up the way you wanted it to be? Cool.
Yeah.
And you're happy about it and you're proud of yourself. Do you think much about that when you're setting up the goal in the first place?
That's good. I'm going to jump on that because Melissa recently introduced me to a podcast that she listens to. The guy's name is Ed Milet, and I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of him, follow him, listen to him, or at least aware of him. And something that he said on one of his episodes that I was listening to really kind of ties in with that. And he's talking about goal setting and achievements, and we want to go out and buy this new car. We want to work towards having and he said, really focus on the feeling that you are hoping that outcome will achieve.
There you go.
And if the feeling, so if it's, let's take a new car, he talks about new cars a lot, and that resonates with me because although I try to be modest with my vehicular purchases, I do have this ooh, a Lamborghini would be cool, or, Ferrari, or, whatever. And I've definitely said this, and I will restate it. I'd rather just drive them than own them. There's a whole different level there. But nonetheless, what is that feeling that I'm hoping to get by even my goal of helping 100 people buy houses this year? What's the feeling that I'm hoping to achieve? And do I actually need to help 100 people buy houses to get that feeling? Or can I experience that feeling every time I help somebody buy a house? And that, if you kind of explore that, and this is why I wanted to jump on it, if you really explore that and say, I want to enjoy the feeling that I get from doing, let's just say, the mundane, the everyday, if I can get that feeling, and this is where storytelling comes, I think we talked about storytelling last week. Storytelling really comes into it. When I do something that seems menial, a small task, sending an email to a past client, making a phone call, and I log that for myself as being a win. Like, oh man,
Absolutely.
that felt good. I made a human connection.
Yeah.
Then I can start to stack up some wins that didn't cost me anything, that built my business, and ultimately end up feeling much more fulfilled than if I turn those into like, oh, I just have to work through this so that I can get this outcome. That'll make me feel good. It's like, no, this should make me feel good. This should feel fulfilling.
And we think of that as a difference between I have to and I get to. You know, if you're getting up every morning and you're looking for that feeling, you're going to be more inspired than if you're getting up in the morning and going, oh God, I have to go talk to people. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I was trying to remember where it was I heard this week, but sticks in my mind that it was Dave Blanchard, who's head of Og Mandino Group.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, I think it was him, but he was talking about it in terms of making a decision about what you are doing and why you are doing it. He said, the people who go out for a dream, you know, what are you doing this for? Because I want to get rich. I want that Lamborghini.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing it for. They're going to get bogged down because life isn't going to get, you know, it's not just you decide, I want this. You know, you still have to do the work.
Yeah.
But you can't just get bogged down doing the work without a goal. Where am I going? And I think that's why this analogy came up to me, because he was saying, if all you do is get buried in your emotions and what's going on right now, and you don't have anything you're really know that you are going for, then you're going to get all buffeted by ups and downs and sideways, and whatever's going on is going to be your condition. But he says, on the other hand, if you can keep the goal in mind like you did, and say, you are here, then all you're doing is navigating currents. You know, it's like, salmon are going to swim upstream. They have that distant goal. They know what they need, you know, where they're heading. All they have to do is just keep swimming and make sure that whatever the obstacle is, that they remember, I have to go through this
is that the new
to get
tagline
out to
for
the other
IDIC?
side.
Just
New
keep swimming.
tagline for IDIC.
Right.
I'm gonna
Just keep swimming.
I'm going to jump in here and read, Matthew Guzman just posted a few things, and it fits in with what we're talking about. So
Oh, good.
I'll share his, and then we'll jump to one of you guys with something maybe that you've had an opportunity to think of. So Matthew says, one thing I struggled with when I started was the consistency to do the things that I knew I didn't want to do, but were necessary to progress in my business. And then as far as advice, he said, if I could give advice to myself when I first started, it would be that at the core of who you are is someone that wants to take care of people, even if it's difficult. That is what your goal is. And then Brooke actually just chimed in. I relate to this. Certain tasks, most tasks in business really, don't have that feeling of instant gratification. When you are really itching for progress, it can be hard to slow down and do the maintenance items. So this is almost the opposite of what we were talking about, where it can be easy to almost get too focused. And this is, I don't think I've ever had this happen driving, literally, but I'm so focused on the mountains and the sunset and all of these things that I'm not paying attention to the 5-car pile up in front of me. And I have to, you know, pull myself back to the actual thing that I'm doing, which is driving. So as we go, I think that's very worth noting. Brooke and Matthew, you guys, thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, guys?
Not on that particularly. I was still thinking on mine.
Fair enough, fair enough.
I think, the one thing you had brought up earlier about burnout.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we're have to deal with, especially those of us are, solopreneurs in this endeavor, have to remember that, things that can burn out, and it's because you're focused too much, trying to, you can try too hard, and you need to give yourself the grace. And just for that, I wanted to make a little bit of a shout out to one of our members, Cherie.
Oh, yeah.
Sauer is going to, starting a program on avoiding burnout this
Yeah.
month. And so, she is really focused on, because she comes from a sports world where, somebody can injure themselves trying too hard
Yeah.
and actually compete below their capability because they're so focused on something. And, to be at your peak performance, sometimes you have to, dial it back just a little bit, because you don't want to burn out before you hit, your dream on the end.
It's like a half mile or a mile run
Yeah.
where you're in competition with everybody else and you're trying to save some of it. If you go full on for the first lap around and you got 3 more to go, you didn't plan that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually makes me think of something, and I shared this with my son this morning because it hit me. And this, just to give you a sense, like, I grew up with a dad that we like called his conversations with us lectures, because he would just go and go and go. So this is like, I dropped his younger sister off at the school, and it was like a 2 or 3 minute drive from the school to where I was dropping him off at his buddy's house because they walked together. So, I mean, this conversation couldn't have been more than 2 minutes because I started somewhere in the middle of it. And as he was getting out of the car, he says, "Thanks for the lecture, Dad." So, this is lecture level stuff. But no, I realized, because I'm, dropping the kids off at school, I struggle with this immensely, and that's comparing myself to other people. And so, dropping the kids off at school, there's cars there that are nicer than my car. And there's cars there that are not as nice as my car. And I constantly have to keep myself in check on both sides of it, of looking at somebody with a nicer car than me and instantly feeling inferior, insecure, and sometimes creating stories in my head about how I'm better than that person, whatever that might look like. Oh, they probably had to work nights and weekends and they're not there for their kids, or like whatever story I have to create to make myself feel better about myself for driving the car that I'm driving. But then you see the person that's car is not as nice, and there's this instant feeling of superiority and like, oh, I've achieved, and why, and then feeling insecure about how I haven't achieved those things. So anyway, I shared with him, like, one of the hardest things in life, I think, is not comparing ourselves to other people. And I think what you were just talking about, the race, right? We're in this race as business owners, and I think, and maybe I'm alone in this, I'm hoping to get some reciprocation on this from the people in the room, from the comments. But I find that as a business owner, I'm looking out the corner of my eyes at my competition, not in a how can I perform well and how am I different than my competition, but in a very insecure, if I'm not doing better than my competition, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, whatever, fill in the blanks on that. And rather than just running my race. And I think that we have competition for a reason. We have, I think that sales goals, you have a company with 5 salespeople and you put up the board, and I think that competition is healthy. I'm certainly not speaking against competition, but I think that as business owners, we have this tendency to be comparing ourselves to each other and feeling like I have to have the nicer car to prove that I'm better than some other realtor in town, or have the nicer office, or we're here at Action Business Furniture. Shout out to these guys. Come get some nice furniture here and show off how amazing you are. 100%. At the same time, like, if you've got a cardboard card table that, like, it gets the job done and you can get started, that don't diminish yourself because you don't have the corner office in the 5th floor of a 5-story building. I'm picturing the show The Office. Anyway, that's, jumping on that, but keep that going.
Okay, so what you brought up is actually something I've been focusing on for quite a while. What you expressed about competition versus something.
Yeah,
In my world, especially in online education, we talk about it as gamification. The point of a leaderboard is because it appeals to a certain human motivation
yeah,
of comparison.
okay, nice.
Who's number one, who's number two? Now, my world was built years and years and years ago, more years than I like to remember, on a book that said there's finite games and there's infinite games. A finite game is a measurement against someone, something, and there's only room for one winner. There's only one number one. Who's number two? We usually don't remember.
Yeah,
Because the title goes to person who won the thing. But that's only one human motivation.
mm-hmm.
So there are 8, and this comes from a study on a book called Octalysis. And gamification, Yukai Chu studies the different things that can motivate people. And when we understand their motivations, we can discover there is other ways to incentivize to keep ourselves. So I'm not really driven by competition, because that's kind of empowerment. What I'm more motivated by is accomplishment. That's when I want to know what the standard is, and I look at how I'm doing against a standard and say, okay, I got this done, but I can do a little bit better. Some of the other ones is meaning, finding a place where, you have meaning, the group has meaning. Social influence. This is why we have influencers. They like to be recognized. Hey, I saw you on Facebook. Then there's other ones like unpredictability. They just like the game. Who knows who's going to come out? Let's just play and see what happens. Avoidance. Some people are actually motivated by what they don't want to be. And scarcity and ownership. And all of these are different motivations. And as business owners, I think the lesson to counter this, compare myself to somebody else, is find a motivation that does drive you, that you can share with other people, saying, hey, I love my family, we haven't, I think that's something I see a lot in your posts and Melissa's as well, that you genuinely love and like your children. You would love to spend time with them as much or more than anyone else in the world. And that's meaningful. And we all need to find those things and then share that with people and say, if you want, I want to make a difference to me, help me hit my goal. Or, let me help you. Those are things that are meaningful in my world.
Love it. I did look up, I'm not even going to try to say his name, but the Octalysis.
Yukai Chu. Yeah.
Yukai Chu, thank you. And I linked to it in the comments. So if you guys
Okay.
are listening to that and you're curious, you can click that link and learn a little bit more about the Octalysis.
Or just call Rob and he'll just talk to you forever about it, because it's great stuff.
Absolutely.
I appreciate, John, I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share with us and 4 million people out there that, that you have that. We all do. Borrowing from the stuff that we talk about in my program, how do you get from where you are to where you no longer think of yourself as being competing with anyone? How do you get there? And part of what we've discovered is that in our marketing business, if we add value in enough different ways to the client, considering us versus somebody else, competition goes away. It disappears because we're willing to do that much more in service. And there's a variety of ways we do that, and that's what we talk about. But giving the opportunity to just say, look, I'm going to set this up so that whatever I do for a living, there is no one that does it like me. There is no one that does it as well as I do. And that's my differentiation. When you start to think that way and when you start to operate from that perspective, then all of the concern about whether or not you're driving the best car that's in the parking lot, you don't care anymore. You just don't. You start looking at people and saying, you're on your journey, I'm on mine.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And all that stuff goes away, that competing kind of thing, it just gets in the way.
Yeah.
It really does, right? John thinks so too.
I think what you were talking about with comparison segues into way back when we started our advice to our younger self. Mine was along the lines of comparison, but I don't have to do things that when I compare myself to someone and I see what they have, and that might be a goal of mine or a similar goal, I don't have to do it the way that they did it if I want to achieve that. Something that I took big steps forward, but also sometimes even bigger steps back with, was signing up for coaches in these businesses. And it was like, here's the skeleton of what you have to do. You do steps A through Z and it'll get you to your goal. And I would do those things and I'd often end up very unsatisfied with the result because I didn't feel like I wanted to feel when I reached that goal.
Yeah.
I have found myself a lot more selective when I'm looking for programs or coaches now that they'll help you build it in a way that's authentic to you. That way, when you do hit that goal, you do have that feeling that you were looking to have when you reached it, or along the way, experiencing it all the way through.
It's a good way to go, and you feel good about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. I want to reread what Brooke said because I feel like in that was a piece of it. But I relate to this: certain tasks, most tasks in business really don't have that feeling of instant gratification. When you're really itching for progress, it can be hard to slow down and do the maintenance items. And I resonate very much with what you just said, where I've seen an outcome that I want and something online, a program, something promised to get me there. And the proposed path was either just miserable.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is unsustainable. I can't do this long enough to get to my result. Or it got me to the result and I realized the result wasn't really what I wanted anyway. And, I use the car illustration, I think, because it's really easy to visualize. I would say that it doesn't often consume me as much as other aspects of that comparison game. But yeah, I think that we see other people achieving a certain level and this is an interesting, I want to throw this out to the group and ask the question, because I think we can all agree finding mentors is super important. Like if I could talk to my younger self, I would say find a mentor, and I would double down on that. And I'm constantly reminding myself, find mentors. Balance that, or talk to me about the tension of finding a mentor. And I'm going to break this into two kind of categories that I've observed. One is finding the perfect mentor. Right. So like I'm going to use Dave as an example. I might look at Dave and say, Dave could be a great mentor for me. And then I might qualify that and say, but he does this idiosyncratic thing, or he has this aspect of his business that I don't agree with, or he fill in the blank, right? Whatever it is. And so maybe I disqualify Dave and then Rob could be a good mentor for me. But Rob does this one thing, right? And so on and so forth. So like, that would be the one thing I want you to talk about is like, I've discovered like, it's good to have mentors that like, hey, if 85% of what you're doing, I want to be like that, that's enough for me to have you be a mentor. So but then also like the other aspect of it is like, at what point do you say like, hey, I've been following Dave and Dave is my mentor and Dave is great and all of a sudden like I start saying, I don't like where this is going. Like, how do you, I guess, break up with a mentor? I talk about Brian Buffini. I love Brian Buffini. I don't know that there's a thing about how he presents things that I would disagree with. At what point though, do I say, okay, Dave's great, Ed Milet, great, this Dave is great, good all around. How do I break out of that and get myself to the next? So I don't know, talk about mentorship.
I think you can have more than one,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
and I think you can also learn from anybody, everybody. You know, so it's not like you have to lock in. I locked into Wayne Dyer for years, and I still do. I still gather from him the stuff that he knows how to teach me. He's still teaching me.
Yeah.
But he's not the only one. I wrote something this morning about Tiger Woods needs a coach. He's probably one of the greatest golfers to ever live. But you can't put a camera in front of him and have him go ahead and swing a club, and the camera doesn't have the capability of stopping right there and holding, let me teach you what you need to do. You got to have a human being on the other side of that that's going to come back and say, let's look at this together. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So it's just a simple matter of go with where you can get good information. Rob Reuter, I don't know how many books you read a week, but this man not only reads them, but he quotes things,
Yeah.
out of them. That's something I admire so much. But we're all looking and we're all growing, and we're not the same person we were yesterday. Different conditions and circumstances come into play. Okay, and there's somebody out there that can teach us something.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I was gonna point out an important distinction, because a mentor is something that's very, very personal, very valuable to me. But in certain contexts, you will always also hear me go on and rail about gurus.
Yes.
And they really are different. Although, cute story, I attended a little session on I gotta do a shout out here real quick. I see Morgan Walters is watching. Hey Morgan, we miss you. Anyway, so I was in this session on authority, how to build authority, and it turned out it was really just an AI thing about how to schedule your posts and things like that, which is fine. I learned some interesting things, but I loved the way she ended, because she was emphasizing about having personal authority.
okay.
and coming across online the way that you do in person. And she ended by saying, you know how to spell guru.
G-U-R-U.
G-U-R-U, right?
Mm-hmm.
G-U-R-U.
All right.
I thought that was really cute. It's the only time that guru actually came across and I said, okay, I like guru. Because most of the time, the thing that John brought up is what I have a problem with most online, people are trying to build a following, because they say, I have the way. And all you have to do is complete these 5 steps, say 3 Hail Marys and things, and you too will have what I have. I believe in more of a mentorship in which I go to somebody who's traveled the route that I want to go and can see the road ahead of me, but still let me do the work. Because I can't do what Dave did and achieve the same things he did, because I didn't live that experience. But if he can watch what I do and say, hey, Rob, this reminds me of this situation. You might want to think about this because I found that, Oh, interesting. Okay, now I take it inside and I figure out, how do I relate to that? Because certainly he doesn't know all of my background and my history. And so it has to be my work. But I can certainly be vulnerable and open myself to change. This is something I was publishing in another group today, is when I open myself up to change and allowing others to guide that in some way, then I will achieve things that I can't even imagine today. And so that's the important thing for me, is just find mentors. And Dave said, can be multiples.
Yeah.
But as you were asking when to leave, if you find the right ones, you never do, but you just find the next one, and they're still there, they're still with you.
Yeah.
You just have to be ready for the next one when they appear.
I like that word change. I think that it's one of the hardest things to change. And yet the thing that we maybe long for the most is to be rejuvenated, to be converted, or converted is an interesting, potentially religious connotation word, but to be metamorphosized, to go from the caterpillar to the butterfly. I am curious though, I'd love to hear thoughts on mentorship, one-on-one, where it's an actual person that you're face to face with that lives in your market, or you actually maybe on the phone, but you're actually communicating with, versus Brian Buffini for me. You guys all mentioned, and I'd maybe even float out as you're answering the question what some of the folks that have been very meaningful to you in terms of somebody you tune into their podcast or listen to. But both, and one or the other valued over the other? How do you approach being mentored?
I consider everybody at the table here as a mentor for me. I learned from all of you. There's a story about when Tony Robbins was just getting off the ground. His hero was Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn wrote a bunch of books and is considered one of the most unique and amazing coaches of all time, really, in business. But Tony Robbins told the story that he was a young guy, he was just getting started, he was starting to just catch on to some of this stuff, and he couldn't get enough of it. And he met up with Jim Rohn, who was going to be a guest speaker. And so Tony said that he was there early, he was sitting at his feet practically when he was on stage. And it finally came time for Tony to be able to step up to the famous Jim Rohn and express how much he appreciated everything that Jim Rohn represented. And he said that he stepped up and he said, "Mr. Rohn, I just can't thank you enough. I just think you're amazing. I want to learn from you. I want to do this. I want to do that." And Jim Rohn looked at him and said, "Have you read my book?" And he said, "No." And Jim Rohn apparently said back to him, "Go home, and when you've read it 100 times, look me up." And the whole gist of the story, the whole reason I tell that, is because you can take, I believe, probably 10 or 20 books and reread them and never have to buy another one. That's an interesting thought too.
Yeah.
Because the information's under the sun. It's here. It's
Yeah.
around us, waiting for us to discover it.
Also, that really answers the question that prompted it, is, you don't have to be across the table from Jim Rohn. He wrote a book.
He wrote a book.
Read it, and then read it again, and read it again, and you'll
Now,
be able to.
the thing we do at Stand Up Mastery is that we say, look, don't expect to read the book and apply it the next day. Read the book, try it, read the book and apply it, but keep working on it, because you're not there the next day. I mean, I don't know of anybody that can, maybe Rob, but anybody else. You gotta really study that stuff and then go out and make mistakes.
Yeah.
Something you said earlier is that we're growing every day, and each and every time you read the book, you're going to be a different person than the last time you read the book, and
good.
so
Exactly.
you can glean different things from it.
Yeah,
That's great.
good point.
Well, I'll say to you, Dave, I have not read your book 100 times, and I appreciate that you speak into my life, despite the fact that I haven't read it 100 times.
So I was gonna jump in because of an interesting twist on the story of Jim Rohn and oh, sorry, anyway,
Tony.
Tony Robbins. One of my mentors is Brian Kurtz, who's a digital marketer and a long time marketer. And so I'm in his group, but one of the things that comes up in our community meetings a lot of times about mentors is that you don't choose your mentor chooses you. And
That's interesting.
that is something that he actually wrote. He literally wrote a blog post, says your mentors choose you. And his point is that the book, a lot of people learn from the books and they learn what they need to learn from the book. But a mentorship needs to have that living experience in it.
Yeah.
Because a mentor is somebody who can see you where you're at and give you something that a book cannot.
Yeah, it's like the golf swing. You can't see it when you're doing it.
You're right. Yeah, and it's like you were saying with the camera. The camera can't. So that's why we need to stop looking at mentors as somebody who's achieved something that we're trying to aim for, and look at mentors as somebody we have opened ourselves up to that sees who we are, cares enough about us, and is willing to give something in that. So
And-
my mentors aren't because they're successful business people. They're mentors because they have some value, and I want to be open to that change.
So that's the difference between a guru
Mm-hmm.
and a mentor.
Right.
By Rob Reuter. Okay.
I love it. Well, we're coming close to the end here, so let's put a bow on this and cover some great stuff.
Could you ask the folks out there to tell us one more time, please tell us what you want us to talk about?
Absolutely. I think you said it well just now.
Yeah. We're looking for subjects that are important to you.
Absolutely.
So can you help us?
Yeah. Feel free to comment here. This will go into YouTube. We're working on distributing that a little bit more roundly. We will have a guest next week. That you want to talk about our guest next week and what you know about what he's presenting, or do we not know what he's presenting about yet?
I forgot what he's presenting about, but we have Caleb Stapp from Deep Creek Financial. He's a financial wealth advisor. Used to work for I forget who, but has his own business now.
Awesome. And hopefully we'll put together a little bit of a teaser for that and promote it a little bit and get people excited. But just so everybody knows, we're here every week, Friday, 3 p.m. You're welcome to come join us live. We have 2 more seats at the table that sometimes get filled, sometimes don't. We'd love to have you here physically on the show. Also, when you comment and weigh in, that's helpful. But we're here live every Friday, 3 o'clock. We'll be here next week with Caleb, and looking forward to hear what he has to share with us. And it'll be a conversation, but with a little bit of a presentational aspect to it.
Do you happen to know a young fellow named Leonidas?
Yeah, right at the beginning, Leonidas jumped on and said hi. That's my son. Shout out to Leonidas Byron, and maybe we'll get him on the show one of these times.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Talk to him about that.
Good kid.
Any other big things? John, you and I have an event coming up February 1st, talking about wellness and cold plunges and blood sugar.
Where's that gonna? Is it gonna be at your office?
It'll be in my office.
What, we'll put it somewhere, but throw out the address and the name of your business so that people
Yeah,
can.
so it's going to be at Lighthouse Chiropractic, which is 2118 North Ruby Street, Suite B.
Super Central.
That'll be on February 1st from 10 to noon,
Looking
10 a.m.
forward,
to noon.
looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing it. We have a limited number of spots for that. 15,
I think we
25?
set it at 25.
25. So limited number, 25. Get your ticket before they sell out. I'll put that in the comments or something as well. So that's coming up. Dave, you've got,
February 8th at Shadle Library, we're gonna do another free workshop, 10:45 to about 12:30 or something.
excellent, awesome,
So hope you can be there for that, or let me know.
fabulous. And we didn't really even go around and do our round of introductions. I think everybody knows this by now, but Rob, you have anything that you want to shout out? Or?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything hot to go. I mean, yes, Gonzaga starts classes on Tuesday, so we're back. We're back in operation there at Gonzaga, and otherwise I'm just plugging away on technology and digital services for my clients. So.
Excellent, excellent, all right. Well, our, Melissa and I, we host a party every month, and ours is scheduled for the 19th. It's gonna be game night. So bring your puzzles, bring your Jenga, we have Jenga, we have a lot of the things, but if you have a game that you enjoy playing, and also, this is really important for me because I know people that aren't gamers, they're not into any kind of gaming. You don't have to play a game. You can just come and hang out. We'll have smoked pulled pork. It's going to be a good time. We'd love to have everybody there. So look for the invitation to that coming soon. And with that, we have 4 whopping minutes left.
Well, hold on.
Oh.
I just noticed a comment by Brooke on mentorship.
Oh, wonderful.
So on mentorship and finding inspiration in general, I think it's a great skill to be able to borrow from a variety of industries or even just different topics. Before starting my business, I had essentially 0 experience in sales, marketing, business, but I've studied psychology. I have lots of experience in talking people through issues and having them feel listened to. Now, I fall back on that a lot when I find myself getting lost in the business aspect.
Awesome.
And I would definitely agree with that. In fact, my philosophy is that, sales and marketing should be about the other and not about me or my product, what I do. It's what are they trying to solve? What is the problem? And if I'm the best one
Solution.
to solution for them. If I'm not, then my job should be to get them to the person who can really
Absolutely.
help them with what they need. So
Also,
hey, good.
Also on that, and Brooks, thanks for sharing that. On that, I think that there's been so many times aha moments for me along the way. Maybe even the reason that I started getting involved in this endeavor that we're doing here is I didn't even know that this existed. Makes my life so much easier just by being a little bit curious. And the only example I'm coming up with is not a real example, but imagine if I was sitting around the table, I was like, guys, wouldn't it be cool if I could digitally send a letter to everybody and you're like, yeah, there's this thing called email, John. And I'm like, what? Fake example, but there's so many things that I've discovered as I go, for that matter, we're sitting in an office furniture store, and this might sound duh, but I don't know that I knew this existed when I started in business, right? I didn't know where business furniture came from. I just didn't. So be curious, ask questions when you're and just kind of what do I not know? And when you feel stuck, and Brooke mentioned earlier, there's those kind of things the monotonous things. When you're I just can't go forward anymore, take a step back and be what else is out there? And she said psychology in that comment. It's there's so many different aspects to what we do. There's no infinite design and infinite combinations. Mm-hmm. There is no limit to how we can endeavor to do this thing together. Just keep going.
Mm-hmm. No limit.
It's good. I love it. John, parting thoughts?
No parting thoughts.
No parting thoughts. Okay. Dave, you're always good to wrap us up and send us out.
I believe that the Zags play tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm going to be hanging around to watch that.
All right. Zag game tomorrow. And
other than that, just I hope a whole lot of people will talk us up and join us next Friday.
Yeah, I think if Mike was sitting here, he would say subscribe, smash that
button, smash that like, share it with your business friends and curiosity, and help us spread the word.
Well, I would say something that Ed Milet says in a lot of his shows is there is somebody that that would benefit from hearing this episode. There's something that you're oh man, that made me think of my buddy, my brother-in-law, somebody that would find this valuable, find a way to share that with them, get them connected with what we're doing. We're doing this because we love it, but we really want to see this change people's lives. So guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Those of you in the audience, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week, 3 p.m. Action Business Furniture. I did forget to get the end thing going, so